After a few years of the world thinking that the former country of Burma, now known as Myanmar, was now stable after many years of instability and isolation, comes another very disturbing and dangerous incident which runs the risk of spiralling out of control. In this video, we give you information and a timeline to the coup in Myanmar. If this is your first time on the channel or you have returned and like the content, then can I ask you to please like, share and subscribe. It really does help me and the channel. Oh yeah, and don't forget to press the bell icon so you never miss out on upcoming videos. And if you are interested in some cool links, then check them out in the links below in the description box. The Myanmar coup d'etat began on the morning of the 1st of February 2021, when democratically elected members of Myanmar's ruling party, the National League for Democracy, were deposed by Myanmar's military. The military proclaimed a year-long state of emergency and declared power for the military. It declared the results of the November 2020 general election invalid and stated its intent to hold a new election at the end of the state of emergency. The coup d'etat occurred the day before the Parliament of Myanmar was due to swear in the members elected at the 2020 election, thereby preventing this from occurring. President Win Myint and State Councillor Aung Suu Kyi were detained, along with ministers and their deputies and members of Parliament. On the 3rd of February 2021, Win Myint was charged for breaching campaign guidelines and COVID-19 pandemic restrictions under Section 25 of the Natural Disaster Management Law. Aung Suu Kyi was charged for breaching emergency COVID-19 laws and for illegally importing and using radio and communication devices, specifically 6 ICOM devices from her security team and a walkie-talkie, which are restricted in Myanmar and need clearance from the military-related agencies before acquisition. Both were remanded in custody for 2 weeks. The NLD won by a landslide in the 2020 Myanmar general election. Myanmar, also known as Burma, has been beset with political instability since it declared independence from Britain in 1948. Between 1958 and 1960, the military formed a temporary caretaker government at the behest of U Nu, the country's democratically elected Prime Minister, to resolve political infighting. The military voluntarily restored civilian government after holding the 1960 Burmese general election. Less than 2 years later, the military seized power in the 1962 coup, which under the leadership of Ne Win precipitated 26 years of military rule. In 1988, nationwide protests broke out in the country. Dubbed the 8888 uprising, the civil unrest was sparked by economic mismanagement, leading Ne Win to step down. In September 1988, the military's top leaders formed the State Law and Order Restoration Council, which then seized power. Aung Suu Kyi, the daughter of the country's modern founder Aung San, became a notable pro-democracy activist during this period. In 1990, free elections were allowed by the military, under the assumption that the military enjoyed popular support. Ultimately, the elections resulted in a landslide victory for Suu Kyi's party, the National League for Democracy. However, the military refused to cede power and placed her under house arrest. The military remained in power for another 22 years until 2011, following the military's roadmap to democracy, during which the 2008 Constitution of Myanmar was drafted. Between 2011 and 2015, a tentative democratic transition began, and elections held in 2015 resulted in a victory for Suu Kyi's party, the National League for Democracy. However, the military retained substantial power, including the right to appoint 1/4 of parliament members. The 2021 coup occurred in the aftermath of the general election on 8 November 2020, in which the National League for Democracy won 396 out of 476 seats in Parliament, an even larger margin of victory than in the 2015 election. The military's proxy party, the Union Solidarity and Development Party, won only 33 seats. The army disputed the results, claiming that the vote was fraudulent. The coup attempt had been rumoured for several days, prompting statements of concern from Western nations such as the United Kingdom, France, the United States and Australia. On the 3rd of February 2021, Myanmar police filed criminal charges against Aung San Suu Kyi, accusing her of violating the export and import law for allegedly importing unlicensed communication devices used by her security detail after conducting a raid on her home in the capital. The export and import law carries a potential prison term of 3 years and/or a fine, and was previously used in 2017 to prosecute journalists for flying a drone above the Assembly of the Union. Meanwhile, Win Myint was charged with violating the Natural Disaster Management Law, specifically for waving at a passing NLD convoy in September 2020, thereby violating rules against election campaigning during the COVID-19 pandemic. On the 8th of February 2021 and 9th of February 2021, the military government issued orders to impose curfew from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. in Yangon and other major cities and restrict gatherings of 5 or more people in the public spaces. On 12th of February 2021, at midnight, members of Myanmar's military and police arrested government ministers, election officials, senior members of the NLD, activists and a former general. On 13th of February 2021, a viral post online showed that the military-run Ministry of Information pressured the press not to use the words junta and regime in the media in the military's first attempt to restrict the freedom of the press. The military regime issued an arrest warrant for 7 well-known activists and influencers, including Min Ko Nyang, for using their fame to spread writing and speaking on the social media that would disturb the nation's peace process. The military's motives for the coup remain unclear. The military has stated that alleged voter fraud threatened national sovereignty. A few days before the coup, the civilian-appointed Union Election Commission had categorically rejected the military's claims of voter fraud, citing the lack of evidence to support the military's claims of 8.6 million irregularities in voter lists across Myanmar's 314 townships. The coup may have been driven by the military's goal to preserve its central role in Burmese politics. The Defence Services Act imposes a mandatory retirement age of 65 for the Armed Forces Commander-in-Chief. Min Aung Hlaing, the incumbent, would have been forced to retire on his 65th birthday in July 2021. Further, the Constitution empowers solely the President, in consultation with the National Defence and Security Council, with the authority to appoint Min Aung Hlaing's successor, which would have provided an opportunity for the civilian arm of the government to appoint a more reform-minded military officer as Commander-in-Chief. Hlaing's lack of power would have exposed him to potential prosecution and accountability for alleged war crimes during the Rohingya conflict in various international courts. The activist group Justice for Myanmar has also noted the significant financial and business interests of Min Aung Hlaing and his family as a potential motivating factor for the coup. Min Aung Hlaing oversees 2 military conglomerates, the Myanmar Economic Corporation and Myanmar Economic Holdings Limited, while his daughter, son and daughter-in-law have substantial business holdings in the country. A few days before the coup, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, had released $350 million of cash to the Central Bank of Myanmar as part of an emergency aid package to address the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. The funds came with no conditions and without any precedent for refunds. In response to potential concerns regarding proper use of the funds by the military regime, an IMF spokesman stated, "It would be in the interests of the government and certainly the people of Myanmar that those funds are indeed used accordingly." The legality of the coup has been questioned by legal scholars. The International Commission of Jurists found by staging a coup, the military had violated Myanmar's constitution, since the alleged election irregularities did not justify the declaration of a state of emergency in regards to the constitution. Further, the jurists found that the military's actions had violated the fundamental rule of law principle. The NLD has also rejected the legal basis for the military takeover. Civil resistance efforts have emerged within the country, in opposition to the coup in numerous forms, including acts of civil disobedience, labour strikes, a military boycott campaign, a pot-banging movement, a red ribbon campaign, public protests, and formal recognition of the election results by elected representatives. The three-finger salute has been widely adopted as a protest symbol, while citizens have joined the Milk Tea Alliance, an online democratic solidarity movement in Asia. Kabar Makiael Bu, a song that was first popularised as the anthem of the 8888 uprising, has been revitalised by the civil disobedience movement as a protest song. Since the onset of the coup, residents in urban centres such as Yangon stage cacerolazos, striking pots and pans in unison every evening as a symbolic act to drive away evil, as a method of expressing their opposition to the coup. On the 2nd of February, healthcare workers and civil servants across the country launched a national civil disobedience campaign in opposition to the coup, with workers from dozens of state-run hospitals and institutions initiating a labour strike. A Facebook campaign group dubbed the Civil Disobedience Movement has attracted over 200,000 followers since its initial launch on the 2nd of February. As of 3rd of February, healthcare workers in over 110 hospitals and healthcare agencies have participated in the movement. The labour strikes have spread to other parts of the civil service, including union-level ministries and universities, as well as to private firms such as factories and copper mines, students and youth groups. On the 3rd of February, healthcare workers launched the Red Ribbon campaign, the colour red being associated with the NLD. The red ribbon has been adopted by civil servants and workers across Myanmar as a symbol of opposition to the military regime. On the 3rd of February, a domestic boycott movement called the Stop Buying Junta Business campaign also emerged, calling for the boycott of products and services linked to the Myanmar military. Among the targeted goods and services in the Burmese military's significant business portfolio include Mytel, a national telecoms carrier, Myanmar, Mandalay, and Dragon Beer, several coffee and tea brands, Seventh Sense Creation, which was co-founded by Min Aung Hlaing's daughter, and bus lines. Public protests have also emerged in the wake of the coup. On the 6th of February, 20,000 protesters took part in a street protest in Yangon against the coup, calling for Aung San Suu Kyi to be released. Workers from 14 trade unions participated in the protests. On the 9th of February 2021, the military used violence to crack down on peaceful protests, injuring 6 protesters, including a 20-year-old woman who was shot in the head. About 100 demonstrators were arrested in Mandalay. On the 10th of February 2021, most of the arrested demonstrators from Mandalay were released. On the 12th of February, the Union Day in Myanmar, junta's crackdown in Malawian became more intense as shots were fired. On the 4th of February, telecom operators and internet providers across Myanmar were ordered to block Facebook until 7th of February to ensure the country's stability. Facebook Messenger, Instagram and WhatsApp services were also blocked. Following the Facebook ban, Burmese users had begun flocking to Twitter, popularising hashtags like #RespectOurVotes, #Hear the Voice of Myanmar, and #SaveMyanmar. US President Joe Biden announced his administration will impose sanctions on the military leaders of the coup in Myanmar and freeze $1 billion in government assets held in the United States on 11th of February. Many countries around the world have condemned the coup. Intergovernmental organisations, including the United Nations, ASEAN and the European Union, expressed concern and called for dialogue from both sides. In addition to concern, the European Union also condemned the coup and urged the release of detainees. In response to the coup, the UN Security Council held an emergency meeting where a British drafted resolution urging the restoration of democracy in Myanmar, condemning the Myanmar military's action and calling for the release of detainees was proposed. But what now for the people of Myanmar? Will the military government be able to get away with the coup, or will people power and democracy win the day? The people of Myanmar deserve to live a life of freedom away from oppression. We can only hope that common sense prevails and violence is not a part of the solution.